Boosie is in hot water with the feds. Him and J. Prince Jr. Mob ties.
When we left out the concert, we under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man.
Boosie is now under serious federal heat, accused of playing a role in setting up Duke the jeweler and leading him straight into a deadly situation after luring him to a rigged dice game in Houston involving J. Prince Jr. Before anyone brushes this off as internet noise, it's important to slow this story down and really understand how calculated this whole move allegedly was, because the details are wild and layered in real street politics. What looks like flashy hip-hop culture on the surface is being painted as something much darker underneath, where money, trust, and power collide in dangerous ways. This wasn't random chaos. This was allegedly a well-planned setup hiding behind celebrity connections and big-name promises. Now let's talk about who Duke the jeweler really was, because he wasn't just some random guy with diamonds in a backpack. Duke was one of the most respected jewelers in the Midwest, a self-made businessman who built his name from the ground up. Working with local rappers, pro athletes, and serious clients who trusted him with high-value pieces, when Boosie reached out about a custom order, that call carried weight because Boosie's name alone could open doors and level up any jewelry brand. But here's where things started feeling off. Instead of handling business in Chicago or Louisiana, Duke was specifically asked to come to Houston with promises of a huge Labor Day weekend, celebrity connections, and multiple big money opportunities waiting for him. Duke was genuinely excited about the trip. So excited that he posted about heading to Houston and teased the business potential online, not knowing what was allegedly waiting for him. From the outside, it looked like a major career move, but behind the scenes, investigators now believe he was being walked straight into a deadly trap. And this is where J. Prince Jr.'s name enters the picture in a much bigger way, because according to street whispers and ongoing investigations, this wasn't some one-time situation. J. Prince Jr. is accused of running the same play over and over, targeting out-of-town rappers, athletes, and successful businessmen who come to Houston flashing money and jewelry. The method is always smooth and calculated. First, the targets are identified using industry connections, social media, and inside information about who's coming to town and what they're wearing. Then comes the friendly approach, not aggressive, not reckless, but polished. J. Prince Jr. allegedly presents himself as a Houston street figure showing love, using mutual friends and familiar faces to lower defenses. Once trust is built, the visitors get shown around the city, introduced to the circle, and made to feel protected and welcomed. But according to allegations, that comfort is exactly what sets the stage for the setup that comes next. The plan was allegedly simple, but slick. They let Duke win a little at first, just enough to boost his confidence and make him feel safe betting bigger amounts. The idea was to slowly pull him in, then flip the switch with rigged dice and drain him completely before sending him back to Chicago, thinking he just had a bad night. That's how these games usually go when everything works the way it's designed to.
Man,
Boosie was standing behind Duke the whole time, and people noticed he kept whistling. At first, everyone thought he was just being playful, but now people realized those whistles were actually signals.
But this time, according to Street Talk, something went completely left and wrecked the entire setup. Word is, Duke somehow ended up rolling with the real dice instead of the loaded ones. Whether someone slipped up, got confused, or the dice got mixed by mistake, nobody really knows for sure. What matters is once Duke started rolling legit dice, the whole script fell apart. He wasn't just winning, he was dominating the table, stacking money hand over hand. By the end of the night, Duke had reportedly won over $645,000, taking money from people who were absolutely not used to losing, especially not to an out-of-town jeweler. You could feel the energy shift in the room as the wins kept piling up. Smiles turned stiff, laughs faded, and tension started hanging thick in the air. The same tricks that were supposed to control the game, magnetic tables, altered dice, all became useless once Duke was rolling fair. What was meant to be an easy cleanup turned into a humiliation for people who pride themselves on control and power. That's when people started noticing Boosie Badazz standing directly behind Duke the entire time, whistling over and over. At first it seemed harmless, like background noise, but now many believe those whistles were signals. Allegedly, he was communicating with others in the room, trying to figure out how to regain control of a situation that was spiraling fast. The wild part is, Duke wasn't being flashy or disrespectful at all. Even while winning huge amounts, he stayed calm, respectful, and professional. But in that environment, winning their money was the biggest mistake he could have made. Once the dice game ended, the vibe flipped completely. Friendly faces turned cold, and the welcoming energy vanished instantly. According to people who were there, nobody was willing to let an outsider walk away with that kind of money. After the game, a private meeting allegedly took place. J. Prince Jr., Boosie, and others from their circle reportedly sat down to figure out how to get that money back. This wasn't emotional or rushed. It was calm, calculated, and strategic. They already knew Duke was attending Boosie's concert the next night, which gave them time to map everything out. His movements, his location, and his routine were allegedly studied step by step. According to what's being said, this turned into a full operation. Multiple people were allegedly assigned to track Duke throughout the day. When the confrontation finally happened in that parking lot, Duke didn't go down easy. He tried to defend himself, but he was outnumbered and completely unprepared for what came next. The attackers allegedly showed up ready for violence while Duke was just trying to get back to his car and leave safely. The attack was fast and devastating. Duke was shot multiple times, and everything he had won at the dice game was taken, along with his jewelry, before the attackers vanished. And this is where things take an even darker turn. Right after Duke was killed, Boosie allegedly shifted into damage control mode. He posted multiple videos, distancing himself and acting shocked.
Internet, y'all got us all the way up, man. We met that dude, Duke the jeweler, the night before. We was gambling. The next day, dude followed us to the concert. When we left out the concert, we under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man. We get fucking money. That ain't our stilo. As a boss, I ain't letting that go down like that, man. This dude finna make me a piece. So y'all need to kill that. That's bad low, man. Don't put us in nothing with no bad low. It's bad low, man.
Kicking off what many now call an Oscar-level performance, meant to separate his name from what had just happened. After everything went down, Boosie Badazz jumped straight in front of the camera, putting on what many people now call a sympathy tour. He talked about how heartbroken he was, how Duke was a solid guy, and how that kind of violence supposedly wasn't his style at all. He even tried to suggest that Duke was upset because he lost money at the dice game, which instantly raised eyebrows. Everyone already knew Duke actually won big that night, so the story didn't add up at all. You don't walk away mad when you just cleared over $600,000. And that contradiction alone made people start questioning everything Boosie was saying. What made things even more suspicious is that Boosie's version of events after the concert kept changing over and over again. First, he claimed Duke left completely by himself. Then later, he said Duke was with other people. After that, the story shifted again with new details that didn't line up with the previous ones. When someone is telling the truth, their story stays solid. When the details keep moving, it starts to feel like someone is scrambling to cover tracks. The most disturbing part of this whole performance was how Boosie tried to flip the situation and make himself look like the real victim. Instead of focusing on Duke losing his life, he talked about how the internet was blaming him, how people were being unfair, and how the accusations were hurting his mental health. The man was gone, and somehow the spotlight kept swinging back to Boosie's image and reputation. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way and only fueled more suspicion. The fake sympathy didn't feel natural at all. It looked rehearsed, emotional on command, like someone acting for the camera instead of grieving for real. That over-the-top behavior made people dig even deeper. Soon after, fans uncovered video footage allegedly showing Boosie's nephew leaving the building just moments before Duke was shot. That discovery sent shockwaves online and pushed the story into a whole new level. From there, the internet went into full investigation mode. People
You
lined
think
up
niggas
security
wake up
footage,
and just
social
choose
media
Boosie to
posts,
steal from?
timestamps, and witness
You don't
statements
think there's better
to
people to
build a
steal
detailed
from?
timeline of how the night
Like,
unfolded.
it's not fucking happening.
Then another
Boosie
major
is
red
not a
flag
victim,
surfaced
dog.
when investigators
Like, that
reportedly
nigga ain't
found
no
Duke's
Boosie
Louis
is a
Vuitton bag
fucking villain.
containing his jewelry at Boosie's place. That alone raised serious questions. Boosie claimed Duke asked him to hold the bag during the dice game. But after Duke was killed, why didn't that bag immediately go back to his family? Why was it still sitting at Boosie's home like it belonged there? As the case gained attention, social media users started connecting this situation to other questionable incidents involving J. Prince Jr. and his circle. Patterns began to emerge: out-of-town artists coming to Houston, dice games, money, and then robberies or worse. Suddenly, Duke's case didn't look isolated anymore. It started to look like part of something much bigger and far more organized. And this is where Boosie's attitude shifted hard. Once the internet started piecing everything together and exposing inconsistencies, he stopped playing the grieving friend. Instead, he became angry, defensive, and aggressive. He lashed out at online investigators, calling them names and mocking their efforts. That reaction told people more than any speech ever could. Someone is truly innocent. They usually welcome investigations. They want the truth out. They want justice for the person who lost their life. But Boosie seemed more focused on silencing questions and protecting himself than honoring Duke's name. And that contrast is exactly why so many people believe this story is far from over. Boosie then switched tactics and started trying to discredit every single piece of evidence fans had uncovered. He dropped video after video attempting to explain away phone records, fingerprints, timelines, and witness statements, but none of his explanations ever fully lined up. The more he talked, the more holes people noticed. When someone has to work overtime just to explain why evidence doesn't mean what it clearly looks like, it usually raises even more suspicion instead of clearing their name. What stood out the most was how much energy Boosie Badazz spent attacking people who were asking for justice instead of actually mourning Duke. He seemed far more focused on defending his image than honoring a man who lost his life. That contrast showed people exactly where his priorities were, and it didn't sit right with anyone watching. Even worse, this behavior allegedly caused cracks inside his own family's circle. And this is where the story takes a wild turn. Boosie's own brother, TQ, reportedly stepped forward, claiming he had receipts proving Duke was set up. When your own blood starts speaking out like that, the situation is already deep trouble. TQ and Boosie had long-standing issues over money and business, with court records tied to disputes involving large sums and artist contracts. But the Duke situation pushed things to a whole new level, because TQ started hinting online that he knew the real story and that Boosie wasn't nearly as innocent as he claimed to be. According to people following closely, TQ suggested he had evidence that could expose the entire setup from start to finish. That alone sent shockwaves through social media, because family beef is one thing, but publicly calling out your own brother over something this serious is another. It made people wonder what kind of information was being kept behind closed doors. Then the internet noticed something even more disturbing. Some began linking Duke's case to what happened to Takeoff from Migos. Both incidents involved dice games in Houston, both involved the same social circle connected to J. Prince Jr., and both ended with young, successful men losing their lives over money and jewelry. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The pattern looked clear to a lot of people. Successful outsiders come to Houston, get invited to exclusive dice games, tensions rise over money or respect, and things turn deadly. That doesn't feel random, it feels systematic. Once people started seeing it that way, the conversation shifted from isolated incidents to a possible pattern of predatory behavior. Some started asking an even scarier question. What if there are more victims nobody knows about yet? How many people came to Houston chasing business or opportunity and never made it back home? How many families are still waiting for answers that never came? For years, Charleston White has been warning about this exact environment. He said the so-called check-in culture is really about identifying and sizing up successful visitors. The Takeoff incident happened at a dice game where money and respect were in play. Duke's situation followed the same blueprint, winning money from dangerous people and paying the ultimate price. Same city, same setup, same circle, and the parallels are undeniable. The federal investigation into Duke's murder is now being viewed as something much bigger than one single case. Investigators believe that once you start pulling on one thread, the entire web could begin to unravel. There's growing speculation that evidence uncovered here could potentially connect to other unsolved cases in Houston, including what happened to Takeoff. That's why this situation matters way beyond one headline, because it could expose how deep this alleged network really goes, and how long it's been operating under the radar. Right now, the federal investigation is still active, but people close to the case say indictments could be coming sooner than later. The pressure is clearly building, and the word on the street is that prosecutors believe they have enough to move forward. Federal cases don't get announced unless the evidence is solid, and that's what has everyone watching closely. Boosie Badazz is still publicly claiming innocence, but reports suggest his legal team is quietly bracing for a worst-case scenario. When federal investigators are building a case, that's not something you can talk your way out of or distract people from online. The streets know this, and that's why this case has so much attention. If Boosie actually goes down, it could open the floodgates for other victims to come forward. People who stayed quiet out of fear might finally feel safe enough to speak up, not just in Houston, but in other cities where similar setups are rumored to exist. This case could seriously change how the entire hip-hop industry moves. Artists may start questioning who they trust, where they go, and who they do business with. The Duke situation has forced a spotlight onto the so-called check-in culture, and people are finally asking the real question. Is checking in really about respect and safety, or is it just a way to identify and target successful outsiders? That conversation is happening behind closed doors right now. Record labels and management teams are reportedly reviewing security plans and warning artists to be far more cautious when traveling. The days of blindly trusting street legends and industry gatekeepers might be coming to an end. If federal prosecutors can prove there's an organized system targeting wealthy artists and businessmen, it could lead to a nationwide crackdown that reshapes the industry entirely. The impact on Houston's hip-hop scene could be massive too. If J. Prince Jr. and others connected to these allegations are taken down, the city's entire power structure could shift. Artists and entrepreneurs might finally be able to operate without fear or pressure, and that alone would change the culture overnight. And when you step back and look at the full picture, the rigged dice game, the fake sympathy videos, the changing stories, the federal investigation, it all starts lining up in a way that's impossible to ignore. This story was never just about one bad night. It points to a system that allegedly thrives on exploitation, trust, and access to successful people. Duke the Jeweler wasn't just an unfortunate casualty. He represents a larger pattern that many believe has been happening for years without consequences. The fact that even family members are now distancing themselves speaks volumes. When your own blood can't stand beside you, it's a sign that something has gone terribly wrong, and once that line is crossed, there's no going back. The federal investigation is still active, but everything happening behind the scenes points to serious indictments coming down the pipeline soon. The evidence stack is getting heavier, witnesses are reportedly cooperating, and the pattern investigators are seeing is way too consistent to brush off. This isn't random or circumstantial anymore. It's starting to look structured and intentional. And if you're keeping up with this case and learning something new, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, as this story is far from over and the updates are only getting crazier. The streets are buzzing, and we're going to keep breaking down what's really going on in hip-hop without the industry filter. This is the kind of investigative breakdown mainstream media avoids touching, but people deserve the full picture, not the cleaned-up version. If you want more deep dives into hip-hop drama, street politics, and the hidden power plays behind the scenes, make sure you check out the next video. Because there are even more situations that expose how organized crime has quietly crept into the music business. These aren't small-time stories either. We're talking about cases that completely flip the image of fame, money, and success on its head. Situations where trust becomes a weapon and access turns into a setup. That's why this matters. Not just for entertainment, but for survival in the industry. One thing this case makes clear is that not everyone smiling in your face has good intentions. Well, sometimes the same people inviting you into VIP spaces are the ones setting traps once the lights go off. Duke the Jeweler learned that lesson in the most tragic way possible, and his story should serve as a warning to anyone moving with large amounts of money, jewelry, or influence. The truth always finds a way out, no matter how hard people try to bury it. Boosie Badazz may have believed a few emotional videos could change the narrative, but the internet doesn't forget and doesn't stop digging. Piece by piece, the story keeps coming together, and justice for Duke feels closer than ever. The feds are watching closely, the pressure is rising, and the walls are slowly closing in on everyone tied to this alleged conspiracy. When accountability finally hits, it won't just expose one person, it'll shine a light on an entire system that thought it was untouchable. Stay sharp, move smart, and always know who you're dealing with, because in this game, trust can cost you everything. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay alert, stay safe, and remember, when big money and jewelry are involved, caution isn't optional, it's survival.